"Save my son and I will surrender to you," the Apache widow told the retired rancher. The sun was slowly sinking behind the distant hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. On the small ranch perched on the edge of the valley, the old rancher sat on his porch, rocking gently in his wooden chair. His eyes scanned the dry grass that stretched for miles, catching the last rays of sunlight. He had lived here for most of his life, long enough to see the seasons change countless times, long enough to see neighbors come and go, and long enough to know that peace was a rare gift. The rancher had once been a man of action, a man who faced dangers head-on. In his youth, he had ridden across the plains, had helped defend towns, and had faced men whose hearts were hardened by anger and fear. He had seen lives lost, families broken, and homes burned. Those memories were heavy, but they were his. Now, older and quieter, he sought only the calm of simple days. He found comfort in the wind sweeping across the hills, in the lowing of cattle in the distance, and in the gentle creak of the porch as he rocked back and forth. Yet even in such quiet, life could change in an instant. On that evening, as the rancher sipped his coffee and watched the shadows lengthen, a movement caught his eye. A figure appeared on the far hill, moving steadily toward him. It was not the usual traveler or wandering animal that occasionally crossed his land. This figure carried a weight, a purpose, that made the rancher stand up and study it more closely. The figure came closer, and the rancher could see that it was a woman. She moved quickly, almost urgently, but with a grace that spoke of strength and endurance. Her clothes were simple, worn from travel, and her hair was dark and flowing, catching the last light of the sun. In her arms was a small shape, wrapped in a blanket. She was carrying a child. The rancher's instincts sharpened. He had seen suffering before, but something about the child and the way the woman held him stirred a deep sense of responsibility. The woman's eyes, meeting his, were filled with a mixture of fear and determination that he had rarely seen in anyone. She approached the fence, stopping a few steps away, and spoke in a voice that was calm but urgent. "Please, save my son," she said. "If you do, I will surrender to you." The words struck the rancher with their weight. She was not asking for charity or kindness alone. She was making a promise, offering herself in exchange for her child's life. He looked down at the small boy, noticing how pale his face had become, how his small chest rose and fell with effortful breaths. The child's lips were dry, and a faint fever burned in his cheeks. Without hesitation, the rancher moved toward the woman. "Bring him inside," he said quietly, though his voice carried authority. "We'll see what we can do." The woman carefully lowered her son into his arms. The boy was light but fragile, and the rancher felt a tug in his chest as he held him. He carried the child into the small, modest house, placing him gently on the bed. The woman followed, removing her cloak and settling onto the edge of the bed, her eyes never leaving her son. "My name is Morning Star," she said softly. "He is Little Wolf, my only son. Please, I have no one else." The rancher nodded, feeling the gravity of her words. He had no children of his own. He had long lived alone, seeking peace and quiet, trying to escape the violence and regret that had followed him through life. But looking at the boy, he realized that some responsibilities were impossible to ignore. This was not a stranger he could send away. This was life itself, fragile and in need of care. He washed his hands carefully, then began examining the boy. Fever had racked his small body for days, and dehydration made his lips and eyes dry. The rancher had no formal medical training, only the knowledge he had gathered from years of living close to the land, treating wounds and illnesses as best as he could. He mixed a warm drink, added a few herbs he knew could help, and gently fed it to the boy, whispering calming words. Morning Star stayed beside the bed, her hand resting lightly on Little Wolf's chest. She spoke to him softly, humming songs she had known since childhood. The boy's small eyes fluttered at times, responding to her presence, and the rancher felt a cautious sense of hope. Hours passed in quiet vigilance. The rancher checked the boy's breathing, cooled his forehead, and gave him small sips of water. Morning Star never left him, only speaking in hushed tones. Outside, the wind whispered through the hills, carrying with it the faint scent of sage and earth. The rancher felt the weight of history in the air, the long struggle between life and hardship, between people and the land, between fear and hope. Finally, as the sun began to set, Little Wolf's fever showed signs of easing. The rancher allowed himself a small sigh of relief, though he knew the boy was not yet safe. Morning Star's eyes shone with gratitude and worry, a mixture that spoke of a mother's love in its purest form. "Do you think he will live?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I cannot promise anything yet," the rancher replied honestly. "But he is strong, and we will do everything we can." Morning Star nodded, pressing a hand to her heart. She had placed her trust entirely in this man, a stranger who had opened his home and his hands to her child. It was a trust born of desperation, yet it was real. She had surrendered to hope. Night fell completely over the hills, and the small house grew quiet. The rancher and Morning Star sat near the bed, watching over Little Wolf. They shared stories in whispers of days long past, of lessons learned and mistakes made. In that quiet space, a bond began to form, not of words, but of shared concern and shared responsibility. The rancher remembered his past vividly, the battles he had fought, the families he had seen torn apart, and he realized that in helping this child, he was not only saving a life but seeking a chance at redemption, a way to heal some part of his own heart. Morning Star, too, felt a sense of relief and a strange hope. She had faced the worst the world had to offer and had found, in this unlikely place, a chance for her son's life. Hours turned into early morning, and the rancher kept his watch. He checked Little Wolf's breathing, adjusted the blankets, and quietly gave him small amounts of water. Morning Star remained beside him, never closing her eyes fully, her hand brushing the boy's hair gently. In that moment, the world outside, the struggles, the dangers, the past, felt distant. Here, in the small room on the ranch, life was fragile but alive, and hope was a quiet but powerful force. By dawn, Little Wolf's breathing had stabilized, and his small hands had begun to move slightly. Morning Star's eyes filled with tears of relief, though she remained cautious. She knew the child was still weak and that recovery would be slow, but for the first time in days, she allowed herself a small smile. The rancher looked at her and said simply, "He is strong, and we will make sure he stays that way." Outside, the hills caught the first light of morning, golden and calm, unaware of the struggle and hope inside the small ranch house. Inside, a bond had formed between two strangers brought together by life and desperation. In that quiet room, the rancher understood something he had forgotten over the years. Courage was not just in fighting battles, but in showing compassion when it mattered most. And Morning Star realized something too, that even in a world full of danger, trust and hope could survive. That night, the rancher had welcomed her into his home, and in doing so had given both mother and child a chance to see the sun rise again. Life would not be easy, she knew. The world outside could be harsh and unforgiving, but in this small moment there was safety, care, and a promise that they would face whatever came together. The rancher, the mother, and the boy, strangers in the world, were bound now by more than necessity. They were bound by the fragile, powerful thread of hope. And so, the first part of their journey ended with the quiet realization that life, even in its most difficult moments, had a way of offering new beginnings. The morning sun filtered through the small window, casting a soft glow over the room where Little Wolf lay. His breathing had steadied overnight, and though he was still weak, there were signs of improvement. The rancher moved carefully around the bed, checking the boy and preparing a small meal of broth and softened bread. Each motion was deliberate, cautious, and filled with care. He knew that even the smallest mistake could undo the progress the boy had made. Morning Star sat close to Little Wolf, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her eyes were heavy with exhaustion, yet they shone with a mixture of hope and worry. She had spent the entire night at his side, watching every rise and fall of his tiny chest. Her voice had grown hoarse from whispering soothing songs, but she had not stopped. Her dedication impressed the rancher, and he respected her strength more than he could put into words. "You did well to bring him here," he said gently. "He might not have survived alone." Morning Star shook her head, her dark hair falling over her shoulders. "I could not leave him. I had to find someone who could help. I had no choice." Her voice was quiet but firm. "I do not know what I would have done if I failed." The rancher nodded solemnly. He understood her fear. He had faced loss and failure many times in his life, and he knew the weight of responsibility could crush even the strongest person. Yet in that room there was a fragile bond forming, two people united by a single purpose, to save a child. For several hours they worked together in silence. The rancher gave Little Wolf sips of water and carefully fed him small pieces of bread, while Morning Star gently brushed his hair from his forehead and whispered words of comfort. Every small movement seemed to matter. Every touch was filled with care. Outside, the wind swept across the hills, rustling the grass and carrying the faint smell of sage and earth. Life moved on around them, but inside the small room, time felt suspended. By midday, Little Wolf had begun to show signs of real improvement. He opened his eyes more fully and even managed a small, weak smile when Morning Star spoke his name. Her relief was evident, but she did not allow herself to relax completely. She knew that children who were sick could take sudden turns, and her hope was guarded. The rancher watched the boy with a quiet satisfaction. "He's stronger than I expected," he said, "but we must continue to be careful. Fever can return quickly." Morning Star nodded. "I understand. I will stay with him. I will not leave his side again." Despite the calm in the room, the rancher knew that the world outside was not so peaceful. People in the surrounding settlements were wary of strangers, especially Apache women and children. He had heard whispers of neighbors talking about a woman moving through the hills, carrying a child. Some feared danger. Some simply gossiped. He knew it would only be a matter of time before someone noticed Morning Star and grew suspicious. The thought made the rancher uneasy. He had always valued his privacy, but now he realized that helping the woman and her child could draw attention, and perhaps danger. Yet, he did not regret his choice. He had seen enough suffering to know that when a life was at stake, fear had to be set aside. In the late afternoon, the rancher stepped outside for a moment to gather his thoughts. The sun was lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the hills. He could see the distant figures of neighbors moving about their land, and he wondered how long it would take for them to notice the Apache woman. A sense of urgency grew inside him. They had to be cautious, but they could not hide from the fact that Little Wolf needed constant care. When he returned, he found Morning Star sitting by the window, watching the hills with alert eyes. "Do you think they will come?" she asked quietly. "They might," the rancher admitted. "People notice things quickly around here. We must be ready to explain ourselves if anyone asks." Morning Star's hands clenched in her lap. "I will do whatever it takes. I cannot let anything happen to him." The rancher nodded, understanding her determination. He had spent his life learning that courage was not just about fighting but also about standing firm in the face of fear. And now, that courage was needed more than ever. As evening approached, Little Wolf began to stir. His movements were slight, but the rancher and Morning Star noticed every detail. He reached for Morning Star's hand, a small sign of connection and recognition. She smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "He is getting stronger," she whispered. The rancher watched the interaction silently. It reminded him of his own past, of people he had lost and the moments he had wished to protect. In this room, he had a chance to make a difference, to act on the lessons of his life, and perhaps to find some peace for himself as well. Night came quickly, and the hills grew dark. The rancher set up a small lantern near the bed, its soft glow casting warm light across the room. Morning Star remained vigilant, never leaving her son's side. She whispered softly, sometimes singing songs, sometimes telling him stories of the land and their people. Little Wolf's breathing was steady, and occasionally he mumbled something in his sleep, reaching for his mother's hand. The rancher realized that the bond between mother and child was extraordinary. Morning Star's determination, her care, and her courage were the strongest medicine Little Wolf could have. The rancher knew that his role was to support them, to provide safety and guidance, but it was her love that gave the child the strength to fight. As the hours passed, they heard the faint sound of horses in the distance. The rancher stiffened, realizing that neighbors or travelers might be approaching. He stepped quietly to the window and saw two figures on horseback, moving slowly toward the ranch. They had not noticed the small house yet, but it was only a matter of time before they did. He returned to the room and spoke in a low voice. "They are coming. We need to be ready." Morning Star's eyes widened with concern. "Who are they? Will they hurt us?" "They might be curious or they might be suspicious," the rancher explained. "We will tell them the truth if they ask, but we must remain calm. Fear will only make things worse." Morning Star nodded, gripping her son's hand tightly. "I trust you," she said quietly. The rancher felt a surge of responsibility. He had promised to protect them, and now that promise would be tested. He moved Little Wolf slightly so that he was comfortable and adjusted the blankets. He made sure Morning Star was seated safely and kept a calm expression on his face, preparing for whatever might come through the door. When the figures reached the ranch, they dismounted and approached cautiously. The rancher stepped outside, keeping his posture calm but firm. "I am taking care of this woman and her son," he said clearly. "They are not a threat." The men exchanged glances, some appearing wary and others curious. The rancher explained Little Wolf's condition, the danger he had faced, and the fact that Morning Star had brought him to the ranch for help. Slowly, the men's suspicion eased, though their eyes remained watchful. They left after a short conversation, murmuring quietly among themselves, and the rancher closed the door behind them. Inside, Morning Star let out a quiet sigh of relief. "That was close," she whispered. The rancher nodded. "Yes, but we managed, and that is what matters." The night passed slowly, with the rancher and Morning Star keeping vigil. Little Wolf slept peacefully, and the quiet bond between the three grew stronger. They shared stories, whispered hopes, and reflected on the dangers they had faced. In that small room, the world outside seemed distant, and for the first time in days, they felt a sense of safety and calm. By morning, Little Wolf's condition had improved further. He could lift his head and respond to voices. Morning Star smiled with hope, though she remained cautious. The rancher knew that recovery would take time, but the first steps had been made. The events of the past day had strengthened the connection between the rancher and Morning Star. They had faced fear together, protected life, and shown courage in the face of uncertainty. And as the sun rose over the hills, they knew that while challenges remained, they would face them together, bound by hope, trust, and the shared determination to see Little Wolf grow strong once again. Days passed slowly, and the small house on the ranch became a place of quiet. Vigilance. Little Wolf's condition continued to improve, but he was still fragile. Morning Star remained devoted at his side, never leaving him for long, while the rancher worked tirelessly to provide the care and attention the boy needed. They had settled into a rhythm, Morning Star feeding him small amounts of water and bread, the rancher preparing herbal remedies, adjusting blankets, and keeping the house quiet and safe. Each movement was deliberate, careful, and filled with concern. Even though the boy's health was improving, the rancher could feel the tension in the air. The hills around the ranch were wide and open, but they were also home to neighbors, travelers, and people whose curiosity often turned into suspicion. The rancher knew it was only a matter of time before someone noticed the presence of Morning Star and her child. He had spent years in the frontier, learning that human nature often mixed caution with fear, and fear with quick judgment. Yet he remained determined to protect them, no matter the risk. Morning Star's eyes were tired, but her determination never wavered. She had watched her son suffer, and she knew that life could be cruel and sudden. Now that he was recovering, she wanted to make the most of every moment with him. She would talk softly, tell him stories of the land, and sing songs from her childhood. Even when the rancher tried to rest for a few minutes, she remained alert, keeping a careful watch over Little Wolf. "Your son is strong," the rancher said one afternoon as he checked Little Wolf's pulse and temperature. "He is getting better faster than I expected. But we must keep a careful eye on him. One day of carelessness can undo all our progress." Morning Star nodded. "I understand. I will do everything you say. I will not let him suffer again." Her voice held a quiet strength that surprised the rancher. She was small and unassuming, yet the determination in her eyes revealed a deep inner courage. Over the next few days, they worked together to restore Little Wolf's strength. The rancher prepared herbal teas to reduce the fever, applied cool cloths to soothe his burning skin, and offered him gentle encouragement. Morning Star whispered to him constantly, stroking his hair and pressing her hand gently against his chest. Each small improvement, the boy lifting his head, opening his eyes, or giving a faint smile, brought immense relief to both of them. Despite the calm in the house, the rancher could not ignore the looming possibility of danger. Whispers in nearby settlements had grown louder. Some people had seen a strange woman moving through the hills with a child and had begun to question her presence. In the frontier, strangers were often viewed with suspicion, and rumors could spread quickly. The rancher realized that their quiet life could be disrupted at any moment. One afternoon, as the rancher stepped outside to check on the livestock, he noticed a small group of men riding slowly along the hills toward the house. Their expressions were uncertain, and they glanced repeatedly at the ranch, as if trying to figure out what was happening inside. The rancher's heart beat faster. He knew he had to prepare Morning Star for their arrival and plan carefully for what he would say. Returning inside, he found Morning Star sitting beside Little Wolf, who was now able to sit up slightly with her support. "They are coming," he said quietly. "Some men from the settlements. We must be calm. If they ask questions, we tell them the truth. But stay close to your son and do not panic." Morning Star's eyes widened. "Will they take him away? Will they take me away?" "They might be curious," the rancher said. "They might even be suspicious, but we will face this together. We have nothing to hide, and the truth is our strength." The men arrived a short time later, dismounting and approaching the ranch cautiously. The rancher stepped outside to meet them, keeping his posture calm but firm. "I am taking care of this woman and her son," he explained. "They are not a threat. The child has been very ill and I am helping him recover." The men listened carefully, some skeptical, some curious. They asked questions about the boy's condition, about the woman, and about the rancher's role. The rancher answered honestly, explaining that the child was fragile and that the woman had brought him to the ranch for safety and care. Slowly, the men's suspicion eased, though their eyes remained watchful. After a short discussion, they left, warning that any unusual activity would draw attention, and the rancher returned to the house. Morning Star exhaled slowly, relief washing over her features. "That was frightening," she said softly. "I did not know what they would do." The rancher nodded. "They meant no harm, but you must understand, they do not know our story. People are quick to judge when they do not understand. But we will continue to protect your son, and we will be cautious." Over the next days, the rancher and Morning Star continued their work with Little Wolf. The boy's strength returned gradually. He could lift his head, reach for his mother, and even play quietly with small objects around the room. Morning Star smiled often, though she remained vigilant, aware that recovery was a delicate process. In the evenings, when the chores were done and the boy rested, the rancher and Morning Star would sit together, sharing stories of their pasts. Morning Star spoke of her life before the illness, of her tribe, and of her hopes for her son. The rancher shared stories of the frontier, of lessons he had learned, and of the regrets he carried. In these moments, a quiet trust grew between them, each understanding the other in ways that words alone could not express. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, the rancher spoke quietly. "You are a strong mother," he said. "You have endured much, yet you continue to fight for your son. That courage is rare." Morning Star's eyes softened. "I do not have a choice," she replied. "I will do anything to keep him alive. I cannot imagine losing him after everything we have endured." The rancher looked at the boy, now sleeping peacefully, and felt a sense of purpose he had not known in years. Helping this child was not just about saving a life. It was about redemption, about making choices that honored the value of life and compassion. But as they grew more comfortable, the rancher could sense that the world outside was becoming more pressing. Rumors were spreading faster than he had expected, and the threat of outsiders discovering them lingered like a shadow. He knew that their small sanctuary was temporary. They needed a plan if they were to remain safe while ensuring Little Wolf's continued recovery. One night, as the wind whispered through the hills, the rancher spoke to Morning Star in low tones. "We have done well so far, but we cannot ignore the risks. People will continue to ask questions. You must be ready to trust me completely if danger comes. We must think carefully about the next steps for your son." Morning Star nodded solemnly. "I trust you. I do not know anyone else who could help us. I will follow your guidance, no matter what it requires." The rancher felt the weight of her trust. He had faced many challenges in his life, but none had carried the same responsibility as this. Protecting this boy and guiding this mother required courage, wisdom, and patience. He was determined to rise to the challenge, no matter the cost. The days passed, filled with careful observation, gentle care, and quiet hope. Little Wolf's strength returned steadily, and Morning Star's relief grew with each small improvement. Yet the rancher remained vigilant, knowing that life was fragile and the world beyond the ranch was unpredictable. Together, they had faced fear, uncertainty, and the harsh realities of the frontier, and together they would face whatever came next. And so, in the quiet of the small house, a bond deepened, a bond of trust, courage, and shared determination. The rancher, Morning Star, and Little Wolf had become a small family, united not by blood, but by compassion, care, and the unwavering will to survive and protect each other. As the stars appeared in the sky above the hills, the rancher looked out the window and silently vowed to keep them safe. For in this fragile family, he had found a purpose that was stronger than fear, deeper than regret, and brighter than any sunset he had ever seen. The days passed quietly at the ranch, but the rancher could feel tension building in the air. Little Wolf's health had improved remarkably, and Morning Star's relief was visible in her smile and the gentle way she moved about the room. Yet, they both knew that the outside world remained unpredictable. Rumors of the Apache woman and her sick child were spreading through nearby settlements, and people's curiosity often turned into suspicion. The rancher had learned that the frontier was unforgiving, and kindness, no matter how sincere, could sometimes invite danger. One afternoon, while Little Wolf rested, the rancher stepped outside to check the surrounding hills. The wind was warm against his face, but there was an unease that he could not shake. In the distance, he spotted men approaching, riding cautiously and scanning the ranch with careful eyes. He immediately realized that this was not a casual visit. These men were curious, perhaps suspicious, and their presence meant that the quiet days they had enjoyed could soon end. He returned inside quickly and spoke to Morning Star. "Some men are coming toward the ranch," he said quietly. "We must be ready. Stay with Little Wolf. If they ask questions, tell them the truth. Calm and honesty are our allies." Morning Star's hands trembled slightly as she nodded. "Will they hurt us?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "They may be suspicious, but I will handle them," the rancher said firmly. "Stay calm and close to your son." As the men approached, the rancher stepped outside to meet them. Their faces were a mix of curiosity and caution. "Who lives here?" one asked. "I am the owner of this ranch," the rancher replied. "I am taking care of this woman and her son. They are not a threat. The child has been very ill and I am helping him recover." The men exchanged glances, some skeptical, some thoughtful. One of them asked, "Why is she here? Why did she come alone with a sick child?" "She is a mother trying to save her son," the rancher explained. "He was very sick and I am helping her care for him. That is all." The men remained quiet for a moment, their eyes searching the ranch, the house, and the small figures inside. Then slowly they nodded and rode away, warning that they would return if anything unusual happened. The rancher breathed a quiet sigh of relief and returned inside, closing the door behind him. Morning Star exhaled, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "I did not know if they would understand." The rancher placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "They may not understand, but the truth is on our side. We will continue to protect your son and nothing else matters." Even with the immediate danger gone, the rancher knew that their lives could not remain this peaceful forever. He realized that the boy's recovery was only the first step. They needed a plan for the future, a way to keep him safe in a world that could be cruel and unpredictable. He began thinking about how to explain the situation to outsiders, how to manage suspicion, and how to ensure that Little Wolf could grow strong without fear. Over the next days, the routine at the ranch continued. Little Wolf grew stronger each day. He could sit up without support, reach for small toys, and even respond to his mother's voice with a faint smile. Morning Star's relief was profound, but she remained vigilant. She knew that life could change in an instant, and she would not let her guard down. The rancher and Morning Star also began to talk more about the future. "He is getting stronger," she said one evening. "But what will happen when people come looking for me, when they ask questions?" "We will face it together," the rancher replied. "The world outside may be uncertain, but here we have control over what we can do. Your son's safety is our priority. Everything else must wait." Despite their careful attention, word continued to spread about the Apache woman and her child. Travelers passing through the area sometimes asked questions, and neighbors occasionally stopped by, curious about who had arrived in the hills. The rancher remained calm, answering questions honestly but carefully, always protecting the identities and safety of Morning Star and Little Wolf. One afternoon, as Little Wolf played quietly with a small wooden toy, the rancher and Morning Star sat together near the window, speaking in low voices. "I have been thinking," the rancher said. "We cannot hide forever. People will continue to ask questions and curiosity can turn into suspicion. We need a plan for when that happens." Morning Star nodded. "I understand, but what can we do? I have no one else to turn to. I cannot leave my son alone." "We will find a way," the rancher assured her. "I have lived long enough to know that caution and honesty are our strongest tools. When the time comes, we will face the questions together." As the days turned into weeks, Little Wolf's recovery continued steadily. He began to walk with help, and his laughter filled the small house in a way that brought warmth to both the rancher and Morning Star. The bond between the three of them grew stronger, a mixture of trust, care, and shared experience. Yet the rancher knew that challenges were approaching. One evening, while checking the perimeter of the ranch, he noticed figures moving in the distance, watching from behind the hills. They were too far away to approach yet, but their presence was a clear warning. Someone was observing the ranch, waiting for a moment of weakness. The rancher realized that they could not remain passive any longer. he returned to the house and spoke with Morning Star. "We are being watched," he said. "They will not leave us alone forever. We must prepare ourselves and think carefully about what to do if they confront us." Morning Star's hands tightened around Little Wolf's small ones. "I will do whatever is needed," she said firmly. "He is my son and nothing else matters." The rancher nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. Protecting the boy and the woman had become more than an act of kindness. It was now a test of courage, judgment, and careful planning. They needed to anticipate the actions of others and ensure that Little Wolf remained safe, no matter the cost. In the days that followed, the rancher strengthened the house and prepared a careful plan. They moved valuable items to safer locations, secured the doors and windows, and made sure that Little Wolf had a comfortable space to rest and play. Morning Star remained vigilant, ready to act if anyone approached. Together they worked quietly, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. Despite the tension, moments of joy still found their way into the small house. Little Wolf's laughter echoed through the rooms, and Morning Star's eyes sparkled when she watched him grow stronger. The rancher smiled quietly to himself, feeling a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life for many years. In caring for this child and supporting this mother, he had rediscovered a reason to act, to protect, and to hope. One night, as the wind blew gently across the hills and the stars appeared in the sky, the rancher and Morning Star sat quietly beside Little Wolf, who slept peacefully between them. "We have come a long way," the rancher said softly, "but we must remain vigilant. There may be challenges ahead and we cannot take anything for granted." Morning Star nodded. "I understand, but I am not afraid, not while we are together. My son is safe with you, and that is all that matters." The rancher looked at the boy, now breathing calmly in his sleep, and felt a deep sense of resolve. They had faced illness, suspicion, and the unknown dangers of the frontier together. Now the most difficult challenges were still ahead, but they would face them as a united family, bound by care, courage, and the shared determination to protect Little Wolf at all costs. As the night deepened, the rancher quietly made notes in his mind of the steps they would take in the coming days. He would teach Morning Star how to manage the house if he was away, how to handle questions from travelers, and how to protect the boy while remaining honest. He would prepare for confrontation, ensuring that trust, courage, and careful planning would guide every action. In that quiet, starlit house, a family of three, rancher, mother, and child, found strength in each other. They had faced illness, fear, and the unknown, and yet they remained together, ready to face whatever challenges the world might bring. Their bond was unspoken but powerful, a combination of trust, love, and determination. And though the frontier outside remained unpredictable and sometimes dangerous, inside the small ranch house, hope and courage burned brightly, guiding their steps toward a future where Little Wolf could grow strong, and where Morning Star and the rancher could continue to protect him no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. The morning air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of earth and sage. The hills surrounding the ranch looked peaceful, but the rancher and Morning Star knew that appearances could be deceiving. Word of the Apache woman and her child had spread further than they expected, and while many people were curious rather than hostile, curiosity often led to scrutiny. They had prepared themselves for questions, doubts, and even confrontation. Yet the calm morning gave them a chance to breathe and to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. Little Wolf was sitting up on the bed, now strong enough to hold his small wooden toy and play quietly. Morning Star's eyes followed every movement of her son, a mixture of relief and joy shining in her gaze. "You are growing stronger every day," she whispered softly, brushing a strand of hair from his face. Little Wolf looked up at her and smiled, a weak but genuine smile that warmed the rancher's heart as well. The rancher watched them, sitting nearby, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and purpose. The boy's recovery had been steady, a result of careful attention, patience, and the love and determination of his mother. The rancher reflected on the past weeks, how fear and uncertainty had guided every choice, how trust had grown between strangers, and how courage had been tested in quiet but powerful ways. He realized that their journey was more than about survival. It had been about finding strength in one another, and about discovering that even the harshest of worlds could offer hope. But the rancher also knew that their peaceful days could not last forever. Outsiders would continue to hear rumors, and sooner or later, someone might arrive demanding answers. He had spent years in the frontier learning that life could change in an instant, and he was determined to be ready. One afternoon, as the rancher checked the perimeter of the ranch, he noticed figures approaching from a distance. This time, it was not just travelers or curious neighbors. They were officials, serious in their expressions and riding with purpose. The rancher knew that he could not hide the truth any longer. He returned to the house and spoke to Morning Star quietly. "They are coming," he said. "We cannot avoid them this time. We must face them together honestly and carefully. Trust me and stay calm." Morning Star nodded, her hand gripping Little Wolf's. "I trust you," she said softly. "I will follow your lead." When the officials arrived, the rancher stepped forward to meet them, keeping his posture calm but confident. "I am the owner of this ranch," he explained. "I am taking care of this woman and her son. The child was very ill and she brought him here for help. That is all." The officials asked questions carefully, their eyes scanning the small house and the figures within. The rancher answered honestly, explaining the boy's illness, the care he had received, and the mother's determination to protect him. He emphasized the urgency and fragility of the child's condition, showing the officials that honesty and responsibility had guided every action. Morning Star stayed close to Little Wolf, her presence calm but protective. She nodded when the rancher spoke, supporting his words with her own quiet expressions of trust. The officials observed her, and slowly the tension began to ease. They realized that the woman and her child were not a threat, but rather a mother and son in need of care, supported by a man who had acted with courage and compassion. After careful discussion, the officials accepted the truth of the situation. They left with words of caution, reminding the rancher that the frontier could be unpredictable, but also acknowledging the humanity and care that had guided his actions. The rancher returned to the house, closing the door behind him, and let out a quiet sigh of relief. Morning Star exhaled as well, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "Thank you," she whispered. "I was so afraid of what would happen. I did not know if anyone would understand." The rancher smiled faintly. "People can surprise you," he said. "But the important thing is that your son is safe. That is all that matters." In the days that followed, life at the ranch settled into a gentle rhythm. Little Wolf grew stronger with each passing day. He could walk short distances, play with simple toys, and even attempt to mimic the songs his mother sang. Morning Star's eyes sparkled with joy, though she remained vigilant, understanding that recovery required care and patience. The rancher and Morning Star continued to work together, sharing responsibilities for the boy, the house, and the small ranch property. They spoke often about the lessons they had learned, about courage, trust, and the importance of acting with compassion even when the world was uncertain. Their bond had deepened over time, and though they came from different worlds, they had become a family united by care, trust, and shared experience. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, the rancher and Morning Star sat together, watching Little Wolf play quietly with a small wooden toy. "We have come a long way," the rancher said softly. "He is healthy now, and that is thanks to both of us." Morning Star smiled, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I could not have done it without you. You gave him a chance to live when it seemed impossible. I will never forget that." The rancher shook his head. You did most of the work. You were there every moment, giving him courage, comfort, and love. I only helped guide him. The strength came from you." Morning Star pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the weight of their journey. "I have learned something too," she said. "That even when the world seems cruel and uncertain, hope and care can make a difference. I will teach my son that, so he knows that love and courage matter more than fear." Little Wolf, hearing his mother's voice, smiled and reached out to her. The rancher watched them, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The boy had survived, the mother had found safety and support, and he had discovered a renewed sense of purpose in protecting and guiding them. As night fell, the three of them sat together in quiet contentment. The stars appeared above the hills, twinkling like tiny beacons of hope. In that moment, the past struggles, the fear, and the uncertainty seemed distant. What mattered was the present, the safety of the boy, the bond of trust between the three of them, and the courage they had found within themselves. The rancher reflected on the lessons learned over the past weeks. Life on the frontier was unpredictable, and danger was never far away. But he had also learned that compassion, courage, and honesty could overcome fear and suspicion. By helping Morning Star and her son, he had not only saved a life, but had also healed a part of his own heart that had been burdened by regret and loss. Morning Star, too, understood the significance of their journey. She had faced illness, uncertainty, and fear, yet she had not given up. She had trusted a stranger, acted with courage, and nurtured her son with unwavering care. Now she had found a place of safety, and a man who had become more than just a helper. He had become a guardian and a friend. Together, they realized that the frontier, while harsh and unpredictable, could also be a place of hope and renewal. They had faced challenges that tested their courage, their patience, and their faith in one another. And in the end, they had prevailed not through strength alone, but through trust, compassion, and determination. In the days that followed, life at the ranch continued peacefully. Little Wolf's laughter filled the house, Morning Star's care never faltered, and the rancher remained vigilant, ready to face any new challenge that might arise. They had created a small sanctuary in the hills, a place of safety, care, and love, where the boy could grow strong and learn the values of courage and compassion. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, the rancher looked out over the valley and felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. The world beyond the ranch remained uncertain, but within its walls, hope and courage had triumphed. Morning Star appeared beside him, holding Little Wolf's hand, and together they watched the first light of day. "We did it," she said softly. "We kept him safe." The rancher nodded. "Yes, and we will continue to do so no matter what comes." Little Wolf reached up, smiling at both of them. In that small, quiet moment, the three of them felt the strength of their bond, a bond built through challenge, care, and unwavering determination. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, yet they had emerged stronger, united, and filled with hope for the future. And so, the story of the rancher, the Apache widow, and her son reached its resolution. Life on the frontier would continue, with its challenges and uncertainties, but they had proven that courage, trust, and compassion could create a sanctuary even in the harshest of worlds. Together, they would face the future, bound by love, hope, and the knowledge that even the smallest acts of care could change lives forever. In the quiet of the ranch house, with Little Wolf safe and thriving, the rancher and Morning Star realized that the true victory was not only in survival, but in the strength of the bonds they had formed, the trust they had nurtured, and the courage they had discovered within themselves. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, they knew that the journey ahead, whatever it might hold, would be faced together, with hope guiding every step.